We are now in the last topic for Excel. It's topic 10, and we're going to look a little bit more in detail at VBA. Nothing too fancy, just enough to get familiarized with the environment and start typing your first command, and more importantly, understanding a little bit of code. Frequently, the best way to get started in VBA, if you don't have experience already, is to record a few macros, then go back to the VB editor, and then try to alter these macros, alter these commands, and start adding your own. So what you need to do for this instruction file for video is to first of all download the file called CodePlay, which you will find under section 10 or topic 10 on Moodle. If you open it, you will notice that the full name is actually SMM198 topic 10 CodePlay. So find the file, download it, and open it, as I do here. The file should be completely empty in the spreadsheet, but what we're working on in the background is the VBE. So the next thing you need to do, although you don't necessarily have to use that step, but it is not a bad idea to activate the developer tab. Now, you should have it activated from topic 9. If you don't, remember, just double click on any of the tabs and then customize the ribbon. And then you simply need to go under main tabs and make sure that the developer tab here is ticked, and then click OK. The developer tab then will appear here as you see it, and from there you can simply click on Visual Basic, so you can open the Visual Basic editor or the VBE. Alternatively, if you remember the shortcut, it is Alt F11. You can see it there appearing on the screen, and it works in the same way both on a Mac and on Windows. On a Mac it's a little bit more involved because you have to press the Alt key plus the function key plus the F11 button. Also in some Windows laptops you may have to do exactly the same thing. Press Alt, function, and then the F11. If you have a full desktop Windows, then you just press Alt and F11 straight away. So I will just activate Visual Basic. In a Windows environment, but also in a Mac environment, it will be more comfortable if we actually put the two windows side by side. So I simply click at the top of this window, drag it towards the edge of the screen, and you see it already highlights this range that says you can have half the space. And then all I need to do is select the other window that will fill up the remaining half. So I have half and half. You can do something similar for a Mac as well. So once you open this, you will see that under VBA project, which has exactly the same thing as the file name, so this is everything which is stored under the file name, you go down to modules and there is module 1. Now this module 1 is a generic name which is created every time that you start programming in a worksheet. Eventually you may want to rename this module, give it a different name, especially if you write a lot of code and you want to group your code in several families of functions or any subroutines that you create, and you would like to keep them separate, so it's much easier to find and document. Remember, if all you do is write a few macros, a handful of macros, then it's fine, you can keep the defaults that Excel gives you. But if you're writing quite a lot of serious code and it becomes longer and longer, you will start losing yourself in it. So it makes sense to actually start documenting what you do a lot more systematically and start actually using quite a lot of comments as well. If you remember, comments were the little bits of green text that appears here. So all we're going to do in this final topic is go through the various commands and actually investigate them a little bit more. Now, the very first subroutine we're going to look here is just to select a range. It's very trivial, perhaps mundane, especially if you have done coding before, but it's important to understand how Excel works, the hierarchy that Excel uses. So even to select a specific cell or a range, you can do it in many different ways. Excel works with a hierarchy that starts at the top level with the application itself. I don't have anything here. We know the application is Excel, but ultimately, if you want to use VBA code, which works across all Office 365 products, something which can work, for example, through Word and so on and so forth, you may actually want to include the name of the application you want called up, for example, Excel in our case. Once you are in Excel, you can start, the next level is the file name, and Excel doesn't understand it as file, it understands it as workbooks. So the first command you type is workbooks, and then you will see that in brackets you type the full proper name of your file, including the extension, including any capitalization there may be, because remember, file names are case sensitive. And then you will see this dot. This separates the higher level with lower level. So what comes below a workbook? An individual worksheet. Now the worksheet I have here is called sheet 1. And what comes under a worksheet comes a range. And what comes below a range comes a command. So the ultimate command is select, which comes right at the end. Now notice once again that after worksheets or after range, or even when we look at over here after workbooks, worksheets or range, these are followed by brackets, and inside the brackets the names you specify, and in this case the range name, is enclosed in double quotes. So you remember to always use the double quotes. So the very first command we have here, if the workbook is not active, and we run this command from another workbook, from our personal macro workbook, it would work fine, because it would call up this file, then find sheet 1, which does exist. If it doesn't exist, it will throw up an error. Then find the range and select the range. Now you will see that I have commented this out. So what I need to do is remove the apostrophe, so my text becomes black, and then all I have to do is either press F5, or in my case just click on the play to run the sub. So with your cursor somewhere inside this sub. So run the sub. We know that from before, anything which is a comment is ignored. So what Excel actually ran is that very first line. So it is in that file, it went to sheet 1, and it selected range A1 to H20, and it's done its job. So I'm going to click now somewhere else to deselect that range. I'm going back here. I'm going to put the apostrophe and comment that line in. The next thing you can do is actually forget about specifying the file and simply say this workbook. So whatever workbook is active. Then this workbook can be followed by sheets. So it's slightly different. You don't say worksheets here, but you say sheets. And then after that you specify the name. And then you say range. I've specified a different range, and then select. So once again, just to see how it works, I'm commenting this in by removing the apostrophe and press play, and now the range D5 to K25 has been selected on the right hand side. Once again I click away, go back to my code and comment that out, go to the next line, and now here you can make this command even shorter. So I just specify sheets, sheet 1, range, and here this is what you can do to select adjacent, which means next to each other, as well as non-adjacent cells. So C1 and D5 are not next to each other, whereas B8 to F15 is a contiguous range. It is an adjacent range. So you can select a number of different bits of the spreadsheet, different ranges. So once again, I'm commenting this in to activate it, and then run this, and you see now it has selected C1, D5 and everything from B8 down to F15. So it works fine again. I'm just clicking somewhere outside. Back to my code, I'm commenting this out. Now the next level, you see every time we go one line down, things become simpler. So you can simply say active sheet. Okay, so you don't need to specify the file and so on and so forth. So this command would work, for example, if you were in sheet 2. Let's see how this would done. So this command specifies a range. So let me change the range to be E15 to J20. So I'm going to comment this in and run it. Now, if I decide to go to sheet 2 and I run again this same command, it selects the same range of cells in whichever is the active sheet. Now, if I try to do this, let me just comment this line out, and I go to my previous command. So I'm commenting it in. So I'm trying to run this one now. So if I run this, you see we get an error because the active sheet is not sheet 1. Now it should work, hopefully, but it might be that it doesn't work because I need to specify a lot more. So I'm going to end this runtime error, comment this in, and I'm going to have another go at this line which specifies this workbook. So let's try running this. No, it doesn't like it either. So you need to make sure that you are on the particular sheet, or at least that you select the sheet. Okay, so perhaps what you could do is say this work sheet 1, and before you specify a range, let's write a new line of code and say this workbook dot sheets, and then say, apologies, I need double quotes, sheet 1, and then I simply say select. Now let's see if this line runs. If this line runs, and there we are, so it selects the sheet. So after I type the line which selects the specific sheet, which is sheet 1, I insert a new line, and then I simply say active sheet dot range, open brackets and open double quotes, type in a range. Let's say in that case we do B5 to H10, close quotes, close brackets, dot select. So on the right hand side we are currently on sheet 2. This asks us to swap over to sheet 1, switch over to sheet 1 and select it, and then select the specific range. So see if it runs. Let's play. Here we are. Right, so you are going to use quite a lot of trial and error, right? And you need to experiment a little bit first. Occasionally you will get mistakes or errors thrown at you. Excel offers you the opportunity to debug this, but the more you gain experience, the easier it will be to overcome these problems. So I'm going now to comment these things out, and actually this line we don't need, so I'm going to delete. So we have seen the next line, and the line after that which just simply says active sheet, and we know that it works both, well, on any sheet you currently find yourself in, so that's the nice thing about it. And you will see the final thing, wherever you are in the active sheet, you can simply say range and specify the range. So if I comment that line in and run it, you're going to get cell C10. So this is the easiest way. If you want to run something on the specific sheet you find yourself, you don't even have to type active sheet. Just make sure that you are on that sheet, and then just simply select the range you want to select. I'm commenting this out, and just a very quick recap about the hierarchy, starting with workbooks, working your way down to worksheets or sheets. You can use either this command, worksheet, or sheets, which I use further down. And then below that is range. And the final command, after describing what it is that you want to select, the final command is select. To complete this introductory demonstration of how to select a range, which is a very simple task, let me also tell you that Excel uses this terminology. So what you see here, workbook or worksheet, Excel calls it an object. So a workbook is an object. The application itself, i.e. Excel, is an object. A worksheet is an object. A range is an object, which can be an individual cell or a number of cells. Now, if you put these objects together, and because they do similar things, they are called a collection. And if you omit the higher parts of the hierarchy, Excel will simply go to whatever is the active object in this case and select that. And this is the premise on which these various commands work. So you can use the full hierarchy, start from workbook, down to worksheet, down to the range, and then what you do at the end is select it. If you omit the workbook, you can either say this workbook or omit it altogether, so the next command or the next object down is a sheet. So in this line, Excel simply assumes that you want the active workbook or this workbook. If you omit sheets, you can go down to either say active sheet and range, but if you even omit the command active sheet or the object active sheet and you simply say range, then Excel will assume that you go down to the current active sheet. Actually, it will assume you want the active workbook, then you want the active sheet, and then you simply go to the range that you specify. So it's a small detail which may not be particularly useful at this point, but later on you may want to differentiate between objects and actually collections of objects. So we know about objects. Objects can have properties, and properties can be set to certain values. So we're moving now to our next subroutine, which is called current date. It's the second one in a row. Now forget for a minute the green comments, ignore them, we're going to bring them in later on. What does this subroutine give us? It gives us the active cell, select the active cell, and then in the value put in today's date. And then again in the active cell, change the number format, and we want the format to be one letter for the day and then month and year, or rather one number. Then we want to change the font to make it bold. So this is shown as .font .bold, and then we set it equal to true. And then we want to change the font color, and we change it to blue. We change the size to 40 points. We can also change the interior color, so it is the background of the cell itself, to magenta. And we can also make the column width, so in the active cell we select the column, and then the column width is set to 20 points. So If we go anywhere in the spreadsheet, let's say we go to cell A3, go back to our code and run it. So this is what we get. We see already that today's date is here. We see that it changed the colors correctly, it makes it blue, etc. The problem is that because we increase the font so much, the column width is not enough. That's why we get these hashtags. So instead, what we can do is we can go to another cell. This time, I'm going back to the code. I'm going to comment out the specific value of column width, and instead I'm going to comment in the final line, which actually simply asks Excel to auto-fit the column to whatever is the size of the text. So once again, I'm running the code, and this looks a bit better. Okay, so now the column has stretched to accommodate the full size of the text that I have, and also put these hideous colors here. Now, assume that you want to do that in a particular range. So rather than going to the active cell, you want to do it on a particular cell. This is very easily done by first of all selecting that range. So I'm commenting in the very first row. So Excel now will select cell F1 and then perform all the functions, all the changes in the properties of the object that we saw here. So I run it once again, and you see now it has gone up to cell F1 and it has inserted exactly the same text. In addition to an object such as a range having a property which you can change or you can set to something, as we saw in the current date sub, cells can also have, or objects rather, can also have methods. So you can perform an action on them, which is something different to changing one of their properties. So a simple such method is to clear the contents of a range or of a particular cell. So go down to the next subcommand, subroutine, which is known as clear cells. So here there are 3 lines. We're going to take them one at a time. So I'm commenting out the last line and I'm commenting in the first one. So the command says with that particular object, which is what? It's a range, clear the contents. So if I run this, it clears what's inside the cells, but it does not actually clear the formatting. So we're left with these 3 cells which are bigger and highlighted in pink. Now let's try the second line. So I'm commenting out the first and I'm commenting in the second one and I'm running it. So what Excel has actually done, it has removed all the formatting from the cells as well. However, you see that the various changed column widths have remained the same. So it does not revert back to the column width. For that, you would need another line of code that would select the specific column or a number of columns and simply reset them. Now there is something else too. If you're not entirely sure what range you should select, because as you type and you develop an area becomes bigger and bigger, then you can use the third command, which is active sheet. Ask Excel to select any range which is used, and this will go to the top leftmost cell and the bottom rightmost cell. Select that whole area and then delete it. So if I put, say, a number here and I put a bit of text here and perhaps another number here and perhaps another one down here at the bottom, or another piece of text. So what I ask Excel to do now is to run this final line, and you see everything has disappeared. So Excel has scanned to find the used range and then it has simply deleted everything. The next thing we're going to look at is assigning variables. which means insert something either for Excel to calculate internally or to actually insert in the spreadsheet itself. So move down to the next subroutine called assign value, this one here, and I have a number of things for you to try. So first of all, the easiest thing to do is to insert a formula. Now, in this case, I'm selecting range B4, so this is what the command does, and in there I'm inserting a formula, and the formula you type it as you would normally type within the spreadsheet, but the difference is you now have to enclose it in double quotes. So to make this a little bit better, I'm going to actually put some variables. Actually, no, I'm going to do it in a minute. So first of all, let's insert the formula. So let me comment this in and run it. So what you have now in cell B4 is a 0, but you actually have the correct formula, which is B5 plus B6. So what else can we do? We can now, I'm commenting this out once again, I'm commenting in the next two lines, which is that I will go to range B5 and now insert a value. So rather than a formula, I insert a value, which is just a number, or in terms, instead of a value, if I enclose it in quotes, it can be a text string. So I'm assigning two values, one in B5, one in B6. So when I run this, these are my two numbers, and because here there is already a formula, this formula activates and calculates it. So if I delete all these and go back and bring in the first line of this sub here, run it, and everything there is assigned in one go. Now I'm going to delete this once again. I'm going to comment out the first three lines, and let's have a look at the fourth line. So the fourth line says variable 1 is whatever value I give in the range B10. So this time, rather than picking a value and putting it in a cell, instead I'm reading a value from the spreadsheet and then I use it for a calculation. So before I activate this, okay, let's have a read through. So I'm defining a variable here, which is the easiest way to do it. Just pick a name, make sure there are no gaps in the name. If you need to separate any individual words, make sure you use an underscore. That's the safest way to do it, or just don't use any spaces. So I'm saying here variable 1 is set to whatever is the value of cell B10. Now the next thing is put in cell B11 whatever is what I have defined as variable 1, and then add to that, you remember the concatenate function we saw at the beginning of Excel? So concatenate, stitch it together with a piece of text that says well done. So how do I do that? I will go beforehand to range B10. As a matter of fact, I can do it afterwards. So I'm going to comment this in and this line in as well, and I'm going to put my cell somewhere else here, and then I'm going to run this code. So all you see here is well done. So what we need to do is go to B10 and put a value, and let's say it's 50. Now nothing has changed here, you see, of course, because Excel has not actually inserted a formula. So instead what we're going to do, going to get rid of B11, but I'm going to leave the contents of B10. So go back to my code and run it once again. And here it has picked up whatever is inside cell B10, and then it has pulled it together with a bit of text, and it has created whatever is the input here of B11. And the final one, if you don't want to put a specific text or value to a particular range, you can simply go to the active cell. So if say the active cell is here, I then go back to my code and run it. So the active cell will simply put, it can be a number, it can be a text string like this one, and so forth. So you see here the first instance whereby we define a variable by simply stating its name and then saying what this variable is, setting it equal to something. You can set it equal to something, or you can read the value that's on a particular range or cell address. The other way, which some of you may be more familiar with, is to define the variable. So come to the next subroutine called define vars, and you may have encountered before, it's a piece of code that you find in other programming languages as well, which is the dim command. So the dim is to define variables, and the variables can be of various types. It can be long integers, as this one, for example. It can be double numbers, which are numbers with lots and lots of decimal places. It can be arrays, multi-dimensional arrays. It can be text strings. It can be lots and lots of different things. In most cases, something like long or double or perhaps text string are the variables, the types of variables that you're most likely to use. You may also use something called a date type of variable, but for the time being, stick with that. If you want to have a look at what types of variables you can define, just Google dim variables Excel VBA, and you should go straight to the Microsoft document, to the Microsoft help, which will list a lot more details of what types of variables you can declare. Now, I have here a couple of things. So what I'm doing is, in the dim command, by the way, you can create one, or you can use one line per variable. So you can say dim x as long, and then go underneath that and say dim y as long. But if you want to not type that much, you can simply separate all the variables by commas, and it's the same thing. You will see Excel automatically, as you write, will turn the dim command, and the statements, the type of variables, will turn them into blue text. It will also automatically capitalize the first letter. Whatever you put here needs to be the name of the variable. I'm simply using x and y, and then I go underneath and then list the values that my variable has. So I say x equals 57 and y equals 132. So as you see, let me just delete everything on my spreadsheet. I do nothing on the spreadsheet, and as a matter of fact, the result that I'm going to get will not even be on the spreadsheet. It will be in a message box. So it will be a pop-up box. Exactly as I said, the message box is another command, msg box, and then in brackets you put the arguments for this command. And the arguments for this command, first of all, it's a piece of text, so it's a string which I enclose in double quotes just before the stop and just after the is, with a space, as you see, and then I concatenate, I use the ampersand, and then I simply ask Excel to add the values of x and y. Now I know the value of x and y, so I should be able to calculate the result. So if I run this command, you will see nothing happens in the spreadsheet, but I do get the pop-up message box that lists my text, the sum of x plus y is, and the space, and then the actual sum, 189. So this is calculated by Excel. You could do something as simple as get rid of that completely, and then the result is going to be x plus y, so Excel will simply show the number to you. Now there's more things you can do, of course. If we go back to or further down to a variant of that, define vars 2. So once again here I'm defining an x and a y, but this time I'm going to have some input which is going to be in the spreadsheet. So this time the value of the x parameter of the x variable is whatever is the value of range A1, and y is whatever is the value of range A2. So let's go to A1 and say 25, and go to A2 and say perhaps 56. So the result is going to be once again in a message box. So if I run this, the product of x and y is 1400. So you can have this as well. Occasionally, not every single calculation you perform needs to be put somewhere in the spreadsheet. You simply want to send a message through a message box to the user of the spreadsheet. And then you click on OK and it goes away. Another way to do that is to actually put this result in a cell. So this next sub is called show sum. I'm making a simple calculation, so I say sum, which is the variable, equals 1 plus 10. Okay, so I'm actually calculating. I know that the result is going to be 11. So the different ways you can do that is, first of all, to say, comment this out, and if I run this, the result is going to be in a message box with the text, the answer is. So I run this, the answer is 11. So this is one way. I'm now commenting this out. The alternative is to go to an active cell. Let's go to this one, C11. So go to the active cell, run it, and put in whatever is the active cell, the answer, 11. Or, let me delete that. Oops, excuse me, delete that in the spreadsheet. Go back to my VBE, comment this out, and comment in the next line. So now I take whatever is my variable and I put it in a specific range, F1. So if I run it now, have a look at cell F1, this now contains the 11. For the final task in this section, let's see if we can transfer what we've done here, which is to insert the result of a calculation into a cell, transfer it in the previous subroutine here, whereby the product of x and y appeared in a message box. So let's say we don't want in a message box, so we're going to comment this line out, and we're going to insert a new line. I'm hitting tab on my keyboard, so I move everything in. Notice, I haven't said anything, but notice how neat it is when you type the code. So sub and end sub are all the way to the left hand side, and the command lines are indented, and we're going to see this structure again and again, especially when you do loops and so forth. So this time what I want to do is replicate what I have here. So let's say that we want to put the product of these two numbers into cell, let's say C5. So first of all you select the range, and then you open brackets. Now notice that Excel starts giving you help. Okay, so you can define it and you can put in the cell and say as range. We don't need to do this now. All we do is we put in the cell address as C5, close brackets, and then I put a dot, and immediately you get a drop down list of all the things you can put there, and there's quite a lot of things you can put there. Okay, quite a lot of things. You can start getting an idea of all the things you can do with this structure. Now all I want to put there is value, so I start typing value. You see this appears here. You can double click on it, or if I simply continue saying value and then I say equals, now notice that Excel automatically capitalizes the V in the value, so it's picked up the correct spelling. If you mistype it, it will probably highlight it in red to alert you that this command has been wrongly typed. And then all I'm going to put in is the product of the two variables. So I don't need to define it as a third variable. I simply type x types y. Now if I press a space here, return rather, you will see Excel automatically will space everything out very neatly. Okay, so you don't need to put all these spaces all over the place because it might be a bit distracting, but Excel will help you and put the spaces in for you. And now, given that I have values in cells A1 and A2, all I need to do is run my code. It will obviously run everything here, or actually it will run all the lines, so it will pick up these two variables. And all I need to do is run the sub. And there is the result. So it has read this and has put the result here. Remember, the result is just a number because the calculation has been done in here, right? If you want to put a formula there rather than multiply that, you could put a formula instead, right? So if we try to do another line, let's say go to cell C8, I'm going to comment this out, and you're going to go to the next line, indent or tab in, and we can say, actually leave an extra line to be neater. We can say range, and we're going to put C8, apologies, C8 dot formula, and the formula is going to be in double quotes. We want to multiply A1 times A2, so it's going to be equals A1 times A2, close and press return. So everything is spaced out again once more. So now we are going to run this sub, and this time you get the same result, 1400, but this 1400 is calculated because we insert the formula. So if we were to go back and make this, for example, 20, you see what is in C8 changes because there's a formula which automatically changes, whereas what is in C5 remains the same because it is a number which we calculated previously. So this number will change when we rerun the sub. So I'm going to comment this out. So if we rerun the remaining lines and press run, let me just see, get rid of that and run it once again. Actually, of course it's not running because it is commented out. So I need to go back and comment in whatever goes in C5. So if I run it once again, you see now the new result is inserted there, but once again it is inserted as a pure number. And for the time being, this is all we need to do. We're going to continue shortly with the second section of topic 10.